The summary of glorifying knowledge. خلاصة تعظيم العلم by صالح ibn Abdullah ibn Hamad al-Usaymi حفظه Allah. The author's introduction. All praise is due to Allah. I testify that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his servant and messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. May the peace and blessings be upon his family, companions, as many as those who study and teach. To proceed, indeed, the servant's portion of knowledge depends upon the heart's portion of glorifying knowledge. So, the person whose heart has been filled with respecting and glorifying knowledge, his heart becomes a befitting and suitable place for knowledge. And depending on how much decrease there is in the heart from glorifying it, then it is the servant's portion of knowledge, up until you find some hearts not having any knowledge within them. So, whoever magnifies knowledge, the light of knowledge will shine upon him, and the messengers and tools of its fields come rushing to him. He does not have his aspiration any goal except to seek it, nor in his own self any delight except to think about it. And it is as if Al-Hafidh Abu Muhammad Ad-Darimi intended this meaning when he concluded the book of knowledge from his book Al-Musnad Al-Jami' with the chapter regarding glorifying knowledge. The most helpful way in reaching a level of glorifying knowledge is to know the ways and points of magnifying it, and they are comprehensive principles that actualize the glorification of knowledge in the heart. So, whoever takes these points becomes a glorifier of knowledge and a magnifier of it, and whosoever disregards them has wasted himself and followed his desires, and he has no one to blame if he falls off seeking knowledge except his own self. Whoever does not respect and honor knowledge, knowledge will not honor and respect him. Number 1. Cleansing the vessel of knowledge. That vessel is the heart, and depending on how clean the heart is, will knowledge enter. So the cleaner the heart is, the more knowledge it will be capable of taking. So, whoever wants to acquire knowledge, then let him beautify his inner self. Let him cleanse his heart from impurities. For indeed, knowledge is a delicate, fine jewel. It does not befit except a clean, pure heart. The purification of the heart returns to two great foundations. The first, being cleansed from the impurities of doubts. The second, being cleansed from the impurities of desires. If you become shy of a creation similar to yourself looking at your dirty clothes, then be shy that Allah looks at your heart, and within it is evil and rancor, sins and errors. Indeed, it is reported in Sahih Muslim from Abu Hurairah that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Indeed, Allah does not look towards your image nor your wealth, but rather Allah looks at your heart and your actions." So, whoever purifies his heart, then knowledge settles upon it, and the one who does not remove his impurities, then knowledge leaves him and disperses. Sahl ibn Abdullah said, "It is haram upon a heart for light to enter, and within it is something that Allah dislikes." Number 2. Making intention sincere to Him. Verily, sincerity in actions is the foundation of its acceptance and the route of ascent. He subhanahu wa ta'ala said, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء. And they were not commanded except to worship Allah, being sincere to Him in religion, inclining to truth. It is reported in the two authentic books, Bukhari and Muslim, from Umar ibn al-Khattab, that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "The actions are by their intention, and for everyone is what they intended." The righteous predecessors did not surpass who they surpassed, nor reach what they reached, except through sincerity to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Abu Bakr al-Marwudi said, "I heard a man saying to Abu Abdullah, meaning Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and he mentioned to him truthfulness and sincerity. So Abu Abdullah said, 'By that were the people raised.'" Indeed, a person only reaches knowledge in accordance to his sincerity, and sincerity in knowledge stands upon 4 principles, and by way of them does the intention of the student of knowledge become actualized if he seeks and they are: the first, removing ignorance from himself, by studying those things that is upon him from servitude and becoming acquainted with the goals of the commands and prohibitions. The second, removing ignorance from the people by teaching them and guiding them to what contains rectification to the worldly life and the hereafter. The third, giving life to knowledge and protecting it from being wasted. And the fourth, acting upon that knowledge. Verily, the Salaf, may Allah have mercy upon them, used to fear the loss of sincerity in their pursuit of knowledge, so they would be wary of claiming it, not because they never actualize it in their hearts. Imam Ahmad was asked, "Have you sought knowledge for the sake of Allah?" So he replied, "To say that it was for Allah is extremely difficult, but it was something made beloved to me, so I sought it. And whoever wastes sincerity has missed out on a great amount of knowledge and substantial amount of good. So it is befitting for the seeker of salvation to constantly check this foundation, sincerity, in all affairs, little or large, private or public. This constant checking will lead a person to seriously remedy his intentions." Sufyan al-Thawri said, "I have never struggled to remedy anything more difficult upon me than my intention, for indeed it constantly changes upon me." In fact, Sulaiman al-Hashimi said, "Perhaps I narrate one hadith and have an intention, but if I reach a portion of that hadith, my intention changes, so then one single hadith turns out to need many intentions to rectify it." Number 3, to gather all of one's zeal upon knowledge. You gather your eagerness by having these 3 things. The first, to be ardent in that which benefits you. So, when the servant is guided to that which benefits him, he strives over it. The second, to seek assistance with Allah in acquiring it. The third, to not despair in not reaching the level you desire. These 3 affairs have been gathered in the hadith that has been reported by Muslim from Abu Hurairah, that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Strive in that which will benefit you, and seek assistance with Allah, and do not despair." Al-Junayd said, "No one sought anything with diligence and truthfulness except that he attained what he sought. And if he did not attain all of it, then he attained some of it." Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah said in his book Al-Fawaid, "If the star of aspiration rises on a quite dark night, and it is joined with the moon of determination, then it shines upon the earth with the light of its Lord." From those things that increases a person's eagerness and brings a person's zeal together is that you look at the condition of those who preceded and to learn about their aspirations. Abu Abdullah Ahmad ibn Hanbal used to want to go out in his youth to the circles of the scholars before Fajr. So his mother would take him by his clothes and say to him, out of mercy for him, "Wait up until the people call for the adhan or they start leaving their homes." Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi read all of Sahih Bukhari to Ismail al-Hiri in 3 sittings, 2 of them being in 2 nights from the time of Maghrib prayer till Fajr, the 3rd day being from the morning till Maghrib prayer, and then from Maghrib till Fajr. In the early stages of his studies, Abu Muhammad ibn at-Tabban used to study the whole night. Then his mother would have mercy upon him and would forbid him from doing so in the night time. So he used to take the lantern and put it under a large pot and then pretend to sleep. And when she slept, he would turn to his class. So be a man whose feet are firmly fixed to the ground, with zeal and high aspiration towering way above the stars. And do not be youthful in physique, weak and old in aspiration. For indeed, the eagerness of the truthful ones never become old. Abu al-Wafa ibn Aqil, one of the world's most intellectual scholars from the jurists of the Hanbali fiqh, used to recite while in his 80s, "My determination, my diligence, my mannerism has not become old, nor my allegiance, my religion, and my generosity. The one that has changed is my hair not being its usual feature, and being old in hair is different from being old in aspiration." Number 4. Exerting your zeal to the knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah. Indeed, all beneficial knowledge, its return point is the speech of Allah and the speech of his Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the rest of the types of knowledge are a service to those two. So take from it in accordance with that which will actualize the service, or it's foreign to those two, so it does not harm of being ignorant of it. And how beautiful is the speech of Iyad al-Yahsubi in his book Al-Ilma', when he said, knowledge is in two foundations and isn't surpassed, except by the one who is astray from the straight path. Knowledge of the book and narrations that have been relayed in a chain from the tabi'i, from the companion. This used to be the knowledge of the Salaf, may Allah have mercy upon them. Then speech became plentiful in those that came after them in that which does not benefit. So, knowledge with the Salaf is more, and speech in the later generations is more. Hamad ibn Zayd said, I asked Ayyub as-Sikhtiyani, is knowledge today more or in those that came before? He replied, speech today is more, and knowledge with those that preceded is more. Number 5. Treading the known path that leads to it. Everything that is sought has a path that leads to it. So, whoever treads the known path to his goal will reach it, and whoever turns away from it does not attain his goal. Indeed, knowledge has a path. Whoever misses it becomes lost and does not attain his target, and perhaps he may gain a small amount of benefit whilst overworking himself. This path has been mentioned by a comprehensive statement by Muhammad ibn Murtada al-Zubaydi, the author of Taj al-Arus. In his poem that he called Alfiyatu Sanad, he says, and no one has reached 1,000 years, so take from every field the best of it, by memorizing a comprehensive text with the most correct opinion, taking it from a beneficial, sincere teacher. So the path of knowledge and its way is built upon two affairs. Whoever takes up both becomes a glorifier to knowledge, because he seeks it from where it is possible to attain it. The first affair is memorizing a comprehensive text with the most correct opinion. So it is a must to memorize. And whoever thinks they will attain knowledge without memorizing, then he is seeking the impossible. The text that is memorized is the one that is comprehensive and inclusive to the most correct opinion, meaning the one that is widely entrusted by the people of knowledge. As for the second affair, taking it upon a beneficial and sincere teacher, so you go to a teacher that will make you understand its meanings and who is distinguished with the following two descriptions. The first, beneficial, meaning that he is qualified in knowledge. So he is from those that are known to have studied knowledge and sought it up until he acquired it, and then he gained a strong command in it. And the origin in this is what has been reported by Abu Dawood in his Sunan with a strong chain to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you will hear, and it will be heard from you, and it will be heard from those who have heard from you. And that which is significant here is the general address, and that no one who is being addressed specifically. So it ceases to be the case from the signposts of knowledge in this narration is that the latter takes from his predecessor. And as for the second description, it is being sincere, and it encompasses two meanings. The first, that the teacher is suitable to be an example, and that you can follow his guidance, conduct, and his silence. The second, he knows the different ways of teaching to the point that he is proficient in teaching the student, and that he knows what is suitable for him and what harms him in accordance with the knowledge, cultivation, that as Ash-Shatibi mentioned in Al-Muwafaqat. Number 6. Giving attention to the different subjects in your search and giving precedence to the most important respectfully. Ibn al-Jawzi said in Sayd al-Khawatir, gathering different fields of knowledge is praiseworthy. Take from every field and do not be ignorant of it, for the free is observant over secrets. The Shaykh of our teachers, Muhammad ibn Mani', says in Irshad al-Tullab, it is not befitting for the virtuous to leave off a subject from the beneficial subjects of knowledge that helps in the understanding of the book and the Sunnah, if he knows that he has the capability to learn it, Likewise, it is not permissible for him to speak badly about the knowledge he is ignorant of, nor to belittle the one who is knowledgeable of it, for indeed, this is a deficiency and despicable. So, it's upon the intellectual to speak with knowledge, or to be silent with forbearance, otherwise he will come underneath the saying of the poet, "It reached me that Sahl ignorantly dispraised sciences that Sahl has no clue of." Sciences, had he known, he wouldn't have disliked, but in any case, being pleased with ignorance is Sahl, i.e. easy. End quote. Giving attention to the different subjects only becomes beneficial by adhering to two principles. Firstly, by giving precedence to what is most important, then most important. From those that the things that the student needs to uphold is the servitude to Allah. Secondly, that his intent at the beginning of his studies is to cover a summarized book in every field up until he completes the different beneficial subjects. Then he looks at which suits him, in which he finds ease, comfort, and ability in. Then he masters that, whether it is one subject or more than one. From the amazing speech of the Mauritanians is the saying of one of them, "If you want to acquire a field, then go all the way. Until you have finished from other than it, stay away." And combining multiple subjects has been made illicit. Like twins racing out of the womb, none would exit. As for those who find within themselves the strength to combine, then they should combine, and their situation is an exception from the general rule. Number 7. The rush to acquisition whilst benefiting from your youthful age. Ahmed said, "I never compared youthfulness to anything except by something that was in my sleeve, then it dropped. And knowledge in your youthful years is quicker to the soul, and stronger in connecting and remaining." Al-Hasan al-Basri said, "Knowledge at young age is like engraving upon a rock." So, the strength of how long knowledge remains as a youth is like the strength of the engravement remaining upon the rock. So, whoever takes advantage of his youth will reach his goal, and will be thankful of what he sees when he becomes old. The poet said, "Take advantage of your youth, O young one, for when you become old, the people will praise your achievements." But let not what has been mentioned make you misunderstand that the older person cannot seek knowledge. Rather, look, those are the companions of the Messenger ﷺ studied knowledge at an old age. Al-Bukhari mentioned in this chapter of knowledge from his Sahih, it only becomes harder to seek knowledge at an older age, as has been clarified by Al-Mawardi in Adab al-Dunya wa Deen, due to the many distractions, the overcoming responsibilities, and the plentiful connections. So, whoever can free himself from those things, then he will acquire knowledge. Number 8. Sticking to tranquility in acquiring knowledge and abandoning hastiness. Indeed, the attainment of knowledge does not happen in one go, for the heart is too weak for that. Verily, knowledge has some heaviness with it, just like heaviness of a rock in the hand of the one who carries it. Allah the Most High said, "Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila," meaning, verily we shall send down to you a heavy word, i.e. the Quran. And if this is a description of the Quran, whilst at the same time it has been made easy, just like He subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ, meaning, and we have certainly made the Quran easy for remembrance. So what do you think about the rest of the fields of knowledge? Due to this, the Quran was revealed, whilst being mindful of this affair in parts and stages, in accordance with the occurrences and great events. He the Most High said, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنُ جُمْلَةً وَاحِدَةً كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا, meaning, and those who disbelieve say, why is the Quran not revealed to him all at once? Thus it is sent down in parts, that we may strengthen thereby your heart, and we have revealed it to you gradually in stages. This verse is a proof in holding on to tranquility in seeking knowledge, prioritizing within it, and leaving off hastiness, just as has been mentioned by Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi in Al-Faqih wal-Mutafaqih and Al-Raghib al-Asfahani in the introduction of Jami' al-Tafsir. And from the poetry of Ibn al-Nahas al-Halabi in his statement, "Today a portion and tomorrow the like of it, from the gems of knowledge that is collected, a person attains by way of wisdom. Indeed, the ocean is only a gathering of drops." Holding on to tranquility and prioritizing necessities, beginning with the small mutun, i.e. texts that have been authored in the different fields of knowledge, by memorizing and studying them, and turning away from reading the big detailed books which the student hasn't yet reached. And whoever exposes himself to look at these big books, then he might harm his religion, and going beyond bounds in the knowledge will most likely lead him to becoming lost. And from the wonderful statements of wisdom is the saying of Abdul Karim al-Rifa'i, one of the teachers of knowledge in Damascus in Sham in the previous generation, "The food of the adults is poison to the children." Number 9. Having patience in knowledge, in acquiring it and giving it back. For indeed, everything that is noble from the affairs is not attained except by way of patience. And the greatest thing that will help your soul undertake the high affairs is being perseverant over it. So, for that reason, patience and perseverance has become commanded to attain the foundation of Iman at times, and at times to attain the completeness of Iman. Allah the Most High said, "Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu isbiru wa sabiru," meaning, "O you have believed, persevere and endure and remain stationed, and fear Allah that you may be successful." And He the Most High said, "وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ." And keep yourself patient by being with those who call upon their Lord in the morning and the evening, seeking His face. Yahya ibn Kathir said in his explanation of this verse, "These are the circles of knowledge. And no one will acquire knowledge except through patience." Yahya ibn Kathir also said, "You will not reach knowledge with a rested body." So, by way of patience, will you be removed from the lowliness of ignorance, and by it you will attain the sweetness of knowledge. Being patient in knowledge is two types. Firstly, patience in acquiring it and seeking it. For memorization requires patience, understanding requires patience, attending the circles of knowledge requires patience, and being mindful of the right of the teacher requires patience. Secondly, patience in giving it back, spreading it, relaying it to its people. So, sitting down for the students requires patience, making them understand requires patience, bearing their mistakes requires patience. Additional to these two types of patience in knowledge is patience upon having patience in both, and being steadfast upon them both. The poet said, "All jump high to reach their aims, but scarce is it amongst the men to be truly steadfast." Number 10. Sticking to the manners of knowledge. Ibn al-Qayyim said in his book Madarij al-Salikin, "The manners of a person are the sign of his happiness and success, and lack of manners is the sign of his wretchedness and destruction. Nothing has brought the goodness to this life or hereafter more than manners, nor has nothing caused the prevention of it more than the lack of it. A person will not be elevated without manners, even if he has high ancestry and lineage. The one suitable for knowledge is the one who adorns himself with its manners, in himself, his lesson, his teacher, and colleagues." Yusuf ibn al-Husayn said, "With manners will knowledge be understood." That is because the one who is well-mannered will be seen to be befitting for the knowledge, so he will be given it. And the one who has little manners, knowledge is too precious to be wasted on him. From this point, the Salaf, may Allah have mercy upon them, gave great concern to learning manners, just like they would in learning knowledge. Ibn Sirin said, "They used to learn good manners just like they learn knowledge." In fact, a group of them gave precedence to learning it first over learning knowledge. Malik ibn Anas said to a youth from Quraysh, "O son of my brother, learn manners before you learn knowledge." And they would show their need for it. Makhlad ibn al-Husayn said to Ibn al-Mubarak one day, "We are in more need of good manners than you are in need of an increase in knowledge." And they used to advise with it and direct the people to it. Malik said, "My mother used to make me wear a turban, and she would say, 'Go to Rabi'a,' she means Ibn Abi Abdul Rahman, the jurist of the people of Medina in his time, "and learn from his manners before you learn from his knowledge." And many people from the students of today were prevented knowledge solely due to them losing their manners. Al-Layth ibn Sa'd supervised over the people of Hadith. He once saw from them something he didn't like, so he said, "What is this? You people are in more need of a little bit of good manners than you are in need of a great deal of knowledge." So, what would the Layth say if he were to see the state of many students of the knowledge in this era? Number 11. Protecting knowledge from that which blemishes it, from what opposes decorum. Whoever does not protect knowledge, then knowledge will not protect him, like Imam Shafi'i said. And whoever ruins his decorum by following into these things that blemishes it, then he has blemished and belittled knowledge, not glorified it, and has fallen into idleness. This can lead to such that the name of knowledge is stripped from him completely. Wahb ibn Munabbih said, "The idle one does not become from the wise." What defines the affair of decorum is the statement of Ibn Taymiyyah, the grandfather, and Al-Muharrar, and likewise his grandson who follows suit in some of his grandfather's verdicts, saying, "Using that which adorns and beautifies him, and staying away from those things that tarnish and blemish him." It was said to Abu Muhammad Sufyan ibn Uyayna, "You have extrapolated everything from the Quran, so where is the decorum in it?" So he said in his statement, subhanahu wa ta'ala, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Meaning, show forgiveness, enjoin what is good, and turn away from the foolish. He said, in it is decorum, good etiquette, and lofty manners. From the most important etiquettes for the student upon himself is that he adorns himself with decorum, and that which leads to it, and that he stays far away from the things that tarnishes it, like shaving his beard, or looking around plentifully in the street, or spreading his feet whilst in a gathering of people without a need, nor for a good reason, or accompanying the lowly, the oppressively sinful, the shameless, and the idle one, or competing with the young and small ones. Number 12. Choosing righteous companions for it. Taking a companion is an imperative need in the souls of mankind, so the student of knowledge needs to mix with other students in order to help him acquire knowledge and strive hard in seeking it. Companionship is beneficial in reaching that which is sought if it is preserved from any wrongdoing. If it does not benefit the one who aims high, except to choose a righteous companion that will aid him, since that close friend will have an effect upon his intimate companion. Abu Dawood and At-Tirmidhi reported from Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ said, "The man is upon the religion of his intimate friend, so let one of you look at whom he has taken as a close friend." Ar-Raghib al-Asfahani said, "The effect of a companion upon his friend is not just by his statements and actions, but even by looking at him. He only chooses an intimate companion due to virtue, not for a beneficial gain nor pleasure, for indeed the ties of association is struck over one of these three goals: virtue, beneficial gain, and pleasure." It was mentioned by the Shaykh of our teachers, Muhammad al-Khadr ibn Hussein, in Rasail al-Islah, "So carefully select the companion of virtue, for you will be known by way of him." Ibn Mani' said, rahimahullah, in Irshad al-Tullab, as he was advising the student of knowledge, "And he should be aware and very cautious from mixing with the foolish, the people of insolence, the shameless, those with a bad reputation, the imbecile, the lazy, for indeed associating with them is a reason for being deprived and a reason for wretchedness of a person. Number 13. Exerting effort in memorizing knowledge, revising, and asking about it. Acquiring knowledge directly from the scholars does not befit without memorization, revision, and asking about it. And these will actualize the affair of glorification of knowledge in the heart of the student of knowledge by turning completely to it and busying oneself with it. So, memorization is isolation with the soul, revision is sitting with a colleague, and asking is turning to a scholar. The great scholars continue to advise and command with memorization. I heard our Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah saying, "We memorized a little and we read a lot. So we benefited from what we have memorized more than what we have benefited from what we have read." Through revision does the life of the knowledge remain in the souls and its connection to it grows. The intent with the revision is to study with your colleagues. And we have been commanded to make constant revision of the Quran, and it is the easiest of knowledge. Al-Bukhari and Muslim narrated from Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Indeed, the example of the companion of the Quran is the example of a tied camel. If he repeatedly binds her, he controls it, and if he lets it go, she will leave." Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah said in his book At-Tamheed at this hadith, "So if the Quran, which has been made easy for remembrance, is like a tied camel, whoever checks upon it preserves it, then how about the rest of the fields of knowledge? And by asking about knowledge, you will unlock its treasures, for indeed a good question is half of knowledge. And those books written about asked questions like Masail Ahmad that have been reported from him is clear proof for the great benefit of questions. And the similitude for these three meanings in knowledge is like planting a tree, watering it, and cultivating it with that which preserves its strength and protects it from harm. So, memorizing is the planting of knowledge, revision is the watering of it, and asking about it is its cultivation. Number 14. Honoring the scholars and respecting them. Indeed, the virtue of the scholars is great, and their station is high, because they are the fathers of the soul. Indeed, the Shaykh is the father of the soul, just like the parent is the father of the body. So acknowledging the virtue of the teachers is mandatory, right? This point was extrapolated from the Quran by Muhammad ibn Ali al-Udfuyi, who he said, "If a person studies with a scholar and takes from his benefits, he is to him a servant." Allah says, وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ, meaning, and mention when Moses said to his servant. And he is Yusha ibn Nun, and he was not a servant to him. Rather, he was only a student of him and a follower. So Allah made him a servant for that reason. The legislation instructs us to preserve the rights of the scholars, to honor, value, and respect them. It has been reported in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad from Ubad ibn Samit that the Messenger ﷺ said, "The one who does not honor his elder and have mercy upon the younger and acknowledge for the scholar his due right, then he is not from my nation." Ibn Hazm reported a consensus in honoring and venerating the scholars. So, from the befitting manners with the teacher upon the student, which comes under this principle, is that you are to be humble to him, give your full attention, and do not turn away from him, that you observe good manners when you are talking to him, and if he speaks, you hold him in high esteem, but do not go into extremism with him. Rather, you place him in his deserved station, so as to not tarnish him and his image whilst trying to praise him. Instead, you thank him, and you make supplication for him. You do not make yourself appear like someone who is not in need for him. You do not harm him with your speech, nor your actions, and you should be gentle with him, and if you correct him in a mistake that he falls into. It is befitting to mention here, quite briefly, to know what is obligatory with regard to the scholar if he falls into a mistake, and it is 6 affairs. Firstly, verifying if this error actually occurred from him. Secondly, verifying that this in fact is a mistake. That is the role of the firmly grounded scholars, so they are asked about it. Thirdly, to not follow him in it. Fourthly, making excuses for him with an acceptable interpretation. Fifthly, advising him with gentleness and discreetly, not with harshness, nor to shame him. Sixthly, preserving his honor, so that his high station is not squandered in the hearts of the Muslims. And from the things that should be warned against, which is not connected to honoring the scholars, is that which outwardly looks like veneration, but in reality leads to humiliation and degrading, like overcrowding the scholar, confining him, and forcing him to tread the most difficult paths while walking alongside him. Number 15. Returning the problematic affairs to its rightful people. The one who magnifies knowledge relies upon the masters and experts to solve those problems that arise, and he does not make his soul do that which it cannot bear, fearing that he speaks about Allah without knowledge, and that he fabricates in the religion. So, he fears the anger of Ar-Rahman more than he fears the stick of the ruler. For indeed, the scholars speak with knowledge, and with clear-sightedness they kept quiet. So, if they were to speak about an arising problem, they speak with their speech, and if they remain silent, what is sufficient for them should be sufficient for you. And from the hardest of the problems that arise is the fitan and the trials that take place, and the incidents and calamities that always renew and become more sophisticated. And those that are saved from the fire of the fitan are those that return to the scholars and stick to their statements. And if some of their speech becomes unclear to him, he has good thoughts of them. And if the scholars differ, he takes the statements of the jumhur, which are the overwhelming majority, and heads of the scholars, giving precedence to safety, and there is nothing equal to safety. And how amazing is the statement of Ibn Asim in Murtaqa al-Usul. It is obligatory in those things that are problematic to understand, that we have good thoughts of the people of knowledge. And from amongst those things that are problematic is refuting the errors of the scholars, and the false statements of the people of innovation, and the opposers. The only ones that speak about them is the firmly grounded scholars. This was clarified by Shatibi in Al-Muwafaqat, and Ibn Rajab in Jami' al-Ulum wal-Hikam. So, the safe, well-known path is to present it to the firmly grounded scholars and then cling to their statements in it. Number 16. To venerate and honor the circles of knowledge and its vessels. For indeed the circles of the scholars are like the circles of the prophets. Sahl ibn Abdullah said, "Whoever wants to look at the circles of the prophets, then let him look at the circles of the scholars. A man comes to them and asks, 'What do we say about a man who that swore an oath to his wife such and such?' So he replies, 'He is divorced from her.' Then another man comes and asks, 'What do you say about a man that swore an oath to his wife such and such?' And he replies, 'He does not become divorced,' with the statement. And this is not except for a prophet or a scholar to speak about. So know and realize their worth. So it is upon a student to give the circles of knowledge its due right. So he sits in them in a respectful manner. He listens to the shaykh whilst looking at him. He does not turn away from him without necessity. He does not become distracted by a sound he hears. He does not play around with his hands nor feet. He does not recline in the presence of the shaykh, nor does he lean on his hand. He does not continuously clear his throat, nor move around plentifully. He does not speak with the person next to him. If he sneezes, he lowers his voice. If he yawns, he covers his mouth after trying his utmost to prevent it. Likewise, from honoring of the circles of knowledge is to venerate the containers of knowledge, where it's preserved, and the main ones are the books. So, what is befitting for a student of knowledge is the safekeeping of his books, the preservation of it, and holding it in high esteem into a great care. So he does not use it like a box where he stores extra things, nor does he treat it like a trumpet, and if he puts it down, then he does so with gentleness and care. One day, Ishaq ibn Rahawayh threw a book that was in his hand, So Imam Ahmad saw that and became angry and said, "Is that how you deal with the speech of the righteous? He does not lean on top of the books, nor does he place it near his feet. And if he reads it upon a sheikh, then he should lift it from the floor and holds it with his hands." Number 17. To defend knowledge and protect it from harm. Knowledge has a great sacredness that necessitates protecting it from the things that could potentially treat it in a way that is not befitting. And this defense has appeared with the people of knowledge in different forms. From them is refutation against the opposer. So, whoever's opposition to the Sharia has become clear, then he is refuted, whomsoever he may be. That is, for the protection of the religion, and as an advice for the Muslims. The second is boycotting the innovator, and it was reported by Abu Ya'la al-Farra as a consensus. So knowledge is not taken from the people of innovation, but if he becomes forced, then there is no problem, just as the people of hadith took narrations from them. The third, being stern to a student who transgresses his level in research or appears from extreme quarreling or bad manners. If the teacher needs to remove the student from the class to reprimand him, then he should do so, just as Sufyan did, and just like Shu'bah used to do with Affan ibn Muslim in his class. The student could also be reprimanded by turning away from him and not answering him, for indeed silence is an answer, as it was stated by Al-A'mash. And we have seen this plentifully from a group of teachers. From them is a great scholar, Ibn Baz, rahimahullah. Perhaps a person would ask him a question about something that does not benefit, so the sheikh would not answer him. Instead, he told the reader to continue reading, or he would answer but not according to what the questioner desired. Number 18. To be mindful when asking the scholar. Avoiding troublesome questions and preserving the revered station of the scholar. For indeed the intent behind some questions is commotion, to awaken fitna and to spread evil. And whoever the scholars see having these type of questions will receive from them a reply which he does not like. Just like the examples that you read in the previous chapter from the reprimanding of the student. So, it is a must to be careful in putting a question to a scholar, and one does not become successful in carefulness unless he acts upon 4 principles. Firstly, to think about his question and why he is asking this question. So, his intentions should be to learn and benefit, not for trouble nor sarcasm, because the person who had bad intention will lose out on the blessing of knowledge. Secondly, understanding what he is asking about. So do not ask about that which has no benefit, and that is known by either looking at your own condition or by looking at the question itself. Examples of that is asking hypothetical questions, or those things that are not mentioned to every single person, but rather it has been made specific to a group of people over things in accordance with their intellectual capacity. Thirdly, making sure the sheikh is in a befitting condition when asking him the question. So do not ask him in a state that prevents him, like being distressed, preoccupied, walking on a path, or driving in his car. Instead, look for those times where he is comfortable. Fourthly, paying attention to how he asks his question by presenting it in a good and respectful manner. So, he starts by making a supplication for the sheikh. He highly venerates him in his addressing. He does not address him like he addresses the people of the street and general folk. Number 19. The heart's passion for the knowledge and reigning of it. True pursuit necessitates loving knowledge and the heart becoming attached to it, and the servant does not achieve the level of knowledge up until his main delight and enjoyment becomes in it. Indeed, the pleasure of knowledge is only attained by 3 affairs. It was mentioned by Abu Abdullah ibn al-Qayyim. Firstly, exerting effort and hard work. Secondly, truly seeking it by turning to it completely and not by being distracted from it. Thirdly, purifying intentions and making it sincere. These 3 are not actualized except by removing everything that will distract the heart. Indeed, the pleasure of knowledge is greater than the pleasure of authority and leading, which so many souls aspire. Much money is spent upon and sacred blood is spilled for. For that reason, The kings would crave for the pleasure of knowledge, would feel its absence, and would desire to attain it. It was said to Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, the well-known Abbasid caliph whose rule filled the east and the west, "Does there remain any pleasure in the worldly life that you have not attained?" So he said, whilst he sat upright on his chair on the bed of his kingdom, "There is one trait left, that I sit in a high place surrounded by the people of hadith," meaning the students of knowledge. And the repeater says, "Who did you mention? May Allah have mercy upon you." He means so that he can say, "It was narrated to me by so-and-so. He said it was narrated to me by so-and-so." And then he mentions the hadith connected in the chain of narrators. Whenever the heart is filled with pleasure of knowledge, the pleasure of normal things is dropped, and the soul forgets about it, to the extent that what is perceived to be painful, he finds with it pleasure due to its greater pleasure of knowledge. Number 20. Preserving your time in knowledge. Ibn al-Jawzi said in Sayd al-Khawatir, "It is befitting for a person to know the value of his hour and the worth of his time, so he does not waste a moment in other than seeking nearness to Allah." And he gives precedence to the best statements and actions, and then the next best. From here did the scholars give great concern to time, to the point that Muhammad ibn Abdul Baqi al-Bazzaz said, "I never wasted an hour of my life in idleness and play." Abu al-Wafa ibn Aqil, the one who authored the book of Funun in 800 volumes, said, "It is not permitted for me to waste an hour of my life." Their condition reached the point that would be read upon them whilst they ate. In fact, they would be read upon them whilst they were in the toilet. So, preserve your time, O student, for indeed the righteous minister Ibn Hubayrah has mentioned in his advice to you with his statement, "Time is the most precious you can look after, and I see it as the easiest thing for you to waste."